we have to remember that there are two axes here. One is the efficacy of the solution, and second is the risk. We work very closely with the enterprises in terms of defining and executing on a data strategy, which tends to feed into our complex AI models, which then feeds into the knowledge base that we have created. We are actually trying to democratize these autonomous platforms. That leads into the productivity, the quality of life. It is a collaborative approach between machines and humans.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TARTLEcast. We're joined today with a special guest. We have Shirish Nimgaonkar. Did I say that correct?
Yes, that's very close.
That's what I'm looking for. And Shirish comes from Massachusetts. He's doing some pretty incredible work in endpoint automation, especially around artificial intelligence and machine learning for endpoint security, predictive analytics, and anything of the sort that comes down to the metadata around those endpoints. And we're happy to have him on the show. So Shirish, thank you for being here.
It's great to be here, Tartar.
Yeah. And so give me a little bit of context about the history of where EBLISS AI started and why you chose to go down that path.
Sure. If we think about what's happened in the last couple of years, there's been an explosion in the number of computing devices. Wherever you see, you're surrounded by a variety of different computing devices, whether it is our cell phone, tablets, laptop, etc. Or if you go in the manufacturing environment, you might see different kinds of devices on the shop floor, or maybe in the retail environment where you see different kind of point of sale terminals, or even within the aviation environment. So you've seen an explosion in the number of devices. You've seen way more varieties of devices. And then now you've seen a greater geographic distribution for those kinds of devices. But the support model in terms of device management still continues to be outdated. That means every time you have some issue with your computing device, you either need to download some kind of a patch or you need to call IT on help desk. The IT teams are great. They can come and take over your device and they can attempt to figure out what the problem is, and then they run some kind of a heuristic solution. But typically what we have seen is a lot of these approaches tend to be slow. It takes time to fix these issues. They tend to be reactive, which means the solution happens to appear after you've already experienced the problem. And three, they're impersonal, which means they apply generic fixes to different kinds of problems. And the impact of all this is added cost because of the human intervention. There is loss of productivity because the devices are not available. And then there's loss in end user experience. And that's exactly what we attempted to solve. In the course of my experiences with numerous Fortune 2000 companies, I realized that there is a critical need to enable automated solutions that focus more on being predictive and proactive, personalized and specific. All of this in a very dynamic way. And the consequence is going to be decrease in the cost of device management and support. It's going to be significantly enhanced productivity and a much better user experience. And that is exactly where EBLISS AI comes in, which is essentially a device management automation platform that automates the process of detection, diagnosis, remediation, prediction, and prevention of a variety of issues in different kinds of computing devices.
So can I ask you something about that? Today, any major corporation has thousands, tens of thousands, some of them hundreds of thousands of endpoints. Now, when it comes to the management of that, you can't just have a one-size-fits-all model. So does the artificial intelligence or machine learning platform on EBLISS AI, can it be tuned to the specific case of what those endpoints are being used for within that corporate entity?
That's absolutely the case, Tartle. So essentially, a specific dynamic solution would really focus on understanding what is the device, what is the specific persona of the end user that is using that particular device, and then based on the specific problem, come up with a tailored specific solution that addresses that specific problem. And the way it needs to happen is we need to look at a variety of data from multiple sources. For instance, our models actually take the data from the tickets. They actually take a lot of the data specifically from the companies as well. We generate our own synthetic data as well. And then based on these varieties of sources, we come up with solutions that are tailored, specific, dynamic, and the system learns over a period of time. So essentially, the objective is to be a self-healing platform by focusing on self-learning over a period of time.
And how long is that self-learning period so that the model can essentially take new data intakes and then from that grow to give better predictive analytics going forward?
Well, TARTLE, it's an ongoing process. So when we go into a specific customer, we already have our knowledge bank, which has been created by looking at multiple customer issues. We have a variety of case studies that we have already created, and then we try to match the specific issues that the customer has with what we have at that point of time. And then we also ingest customer specific data into our models, and then we start building additional solutions that continue to evolve as the system learns specifically about the specific customer environment.
Okay. And so more of the EBLISS AI, is it, I understand the learning algorithm of it, but is it more of a machine learning aspect or more of a generative AI aspect?
We use different kinds of models. So there are some specific problems that require the classic machine learning approach, which is what we focus on. And then we also use a variety of generative AI models. We have an LLM, which we take from different sources. And then we build our own small language model that is trained based on the domain expertise that we have, which is a function of the data that we have about the customers and the expertise that we have internally within the company. And then based on the small language that we create, then we have our agents, the agentic AI part, that engages in two things. One, reasoning and better understanding the specific issues and the problems that we are seeing within the user environment, and then coming up with automated actions that, based on the specific understanding, could be triggered so as to solve the specific issues.
Now, that makes sense. So when you're engaging with an enterprise, if the enterprise has many endpoints but poor data collection mechanisms, do you find that delays the process for the learning or essentially getting any sort of valued analytics or insights that would come from EBLISS AI on top of essentially that data stack of endpoint devices?
That's correct. So we work very closely with the enterprises in terms of having a robust data strategy as well. While the enterprise data or the customer specific data is one part of the overall data set that we have our own synthetic data as well that we bring to the table. We have the learnings that we have had from so many multiple customers that we get to the table as well. And then we actually deploy our own agents on all the end user endpoints. So we are proactively collecting a lot of data as well. So we work very closely with the enterprises in terms of defining and executing on a data strategy, which tends to feed into our complex AI models, which then feeds into the knowledge base that we have created, and then we continue to create along with the customer. And that is what leads to the differentiated outcomes, which is automation of the detection, diagnosis, remediation, prediction, and prevention of issues.
Understood. And you had mentioned earlier, Shirish, the aspects of synthetic data. So at what point in the process, what threshold do you see when you actually need to start using synthetic data? Is it because the customer enterprise data is lacking and it needs to be filled? Or are you using the synthetic data to train your smaller LLM off of what has been gathered from the enterprises themselves?
Well, we start by training our small language models with the synthetic data that we have. And then over a period of time, we actually work with the customers as well. In some cases, we see that we may not have as much information or data that we would ideally like to have. But then usually we have seen that issue can be addressed by working in collaboration with our customers and then having some alignment on what a comprehensive strategy should look like. Then, of course, we have clear and compelling roadmaps in place where we show them what our vision is going to be in terms of value creation. And then we work very closely with them in terms of tracking the metrics and the milestones that lead to the value creation over a period of time.
Okay, so now let's set the customer aside for a moment. When it comes to EBLISS AI and the fact that you're using the synthetic data inside of your model, I know that as synthetic data gets injected into models, especially smaller LLMs, and they train up to about 40 to 50% of the total data intake that goes into the model is synthetic. The model has some pretty nasty fractures and tends to fail a given, X period of time. And it's an issue with recursion inside of the model. So how are you guys dealing with those issues with ingesting synthetic data as opposed to taking in real world novel data for the training of your smaller language model?
We actually take a combination approach, right? In addition to the synthetic data, we also have had a lot of customer data from the past. We take in a lot of the ITSM ticket data, right? We take in specific data about the user profiles as well. And then we take all that, and that is how the model is created over a period of time. And then we also have human experts who are involved in the process, right? So even though we might think that we have all relevant data and the solution set that can actually solve the problems, we do have human supervision and approval in quite a few cases in terms of what the efficacy of the solution could be, right? Because we have to remember that there are two axes here. One is the efficacy of the solution, and second is the risks and the unintended consequences of the solutions. And what we are trying to do is progress along the axis of increasing the value and the efficacy while making sure that the risk and the unintended consequences are also managed effectively.
So how do you intend to do that? And this is more of a strategic question going forward into the future. As the amount of endpoints are going to increase, obviously, the amount of data they're going to generate is going to increase. How do you manage that backside risk with the analysis and make sure that across tens or hundreds of thousands, if not millions of endpoints, you get proper insight into when something does begin to slip? Because I could imagine it'd be difficult for the model to pick up on the fact that small, incremental, multi-decimal places behind changes occur, but as they stack over time over many of these devices, that could cause a huge risk. So how are you in the long term trying to identify these things?
That's a great question. So it is an evolving process, right? As an AI has evolved significantly, and it will continue to evolve significantly over the next couple of years. But the way we take a measured approach towards risk management is along three dimensions, right? One, we make sure that we are proactive in terms of human supervision and going through a clearly defined approval process from a solutioning standpoint, where our experts are also involved in terms of providing that added layer of security guarantees. Number two, we frequently take the required approval. So there are checks and balances in terms of how the solutions are executed. So we have the IT admins who are actually very closely involved in the process as well. And we want to make sure that we are tracking not just the false positives, but the false negatives as well in terms of how we are executing on these solutions. So we have a very elaborate dashboard which tracks all these different metrics in terms of what our efficacy has been with respect to the issues that we identified and the percentage of issues that were actually fixed. But then we also take input from the users and the IT admins with respect to the issues that we were not able to identify. So we are actually looking at both sides. And number three, we frequently take approvals from the end users as well with respect to the automation that we are executing on and whether they are in alignment with respect to the objectives and the potential risks as well. So it is a comprehensive, collaborative approach that we engage in. And then we have clearly defined metrics that we track with respect to how well we are doing.
Do you find it interesting that EBLISS AI is designed to reduce human IT burden on endpoint management, and now you guys have assumed the risk with human supervision on your side? It seems like there's just been a shift now. And the reason I ask that, let me tell you why I ask. It seems that no matter what occurs, there's always going to have to be a human in the loop. Am I wrong?
Well, we look at eventually accomplishing our objectives of providing or enabling higher productivity for our end users so that they can focus on the kinds of things that they would really want to focus on and increase their value generation capabilities over a period of time. And it is a collaborative approach between machines and humans, right? So it would be foolhardy for me to say that machines can take care of pretty much all the tasks. Our objective is for our algorithms and machines to increase the extent of value that they're adding over a period of time, and then also provide guidance and comfort with respect to the risk management. So while we are taking on certain aspects of the risk, the way I would approach it is that if you're effectively trying to minimize the risk in the system, not just shifting risk from one party to the other, right? And over a period of time, the hope is that the productivity will be increased and the risk will be minimized and managed so that the productivity divided by the risk, which is a ratio of how effective the solutions are, will continue to increase over a period of time.
And do you think that productivity is inextricably intertwined with an increase in intelligence or understanding of the systems?
There is a strong correlation between how well the systems are performing over a period of time and how much more productive the end users are. And it's just not a function of the intellect, but it's also a function of how well you manage all these elements of risk as well as we have defined. So essentially, you're looking at the ratio of productivity to risk over a period of time.
Now, and you talk about today what's required and where we're headed in the future. You talk about the collaboration between machine and human. What is that collaboration? And do you see today that the humans are leading the charge here and the technology follows? Or do you see it inverse where the technology is leading and the human follows? And do you see that relationship changing in time?
That's a very interesting question, Tartle. I think as we think about the evolution of newer technologies, in this case, let's say AI, right, towards the beginning of the evolution, there is, for obvious reasons, a lot of hype and also a lot of noise around what the potential of AI might be. And then there are some bold statements made around what it can possibly accomplish. And then there is inevitably a period of disappointment because you're not able to match up to the hype and the promise. And then there is a rush in terms of adopting some of these technologies, as we have seen in this case, but then there is a lag between the expected value or the hoped for value that you would have liked from deployment and where you actually are. So I think we are sort of still in the initial phases, but a little bit more evolved with respect to the adoption of a lot of these AI platforms and technologies right now. And I think the companies, and I'm clearly seeing that from a market standpoint, the companies that will do well over the next couple of years are those that have a clearly defined vision in terms of what is it that they're hoping to achieve from a business objective standpoint. Then based on that, they have a clearly defined governance structure and ownership that is clearly defined as well. And then they use a lot of these platforms, autonomous platforms or AI platforms, to essentially focus on executing on the value that has been sort of described or outlined as a part of their vision. So again, to your point, it is clearly dependent on having the right kind of collaboration between the humans defining the objectives and the vision, and then they thinking about how best to use the technologies to achieve those value objectives, as opposed to saying, let me just go and adopt this technology without having a very clear understanding of why is it that we're trying to do that.
And do you think it's smart for human beings to just adopt technologies for economic or productive gain? Because there's a lot of things you can do to make things more efficient and economical, but it doesn't mean that it's best for human beings.
I think our overarching objective has always been, how do you, in addition to making humans more productive, how do you provide a better experience? So, and how do you enable more happiness and pleasure and more joy and fulfillment for them as they embark on the kinds of tasks and activities that they think they should be doing, while probably minimizing the kind of mundane tasks that could possibly be outsourced to some of these autonomous technology platforms. So our overarching framework has been improving the quality of life for humans, and productivity, which leads to economic value, is one aspect of it, but it is not the complete picture. And hence our title, which is EBLISS, where we are focused on the blissful experience for the end users through the route of productivity enhancement, which leads to economic gains for the companies as well.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That makes more sense. And it rounds out the picture much more holistically for why you're creating this technology rather than just creating technology for technology's sake, because that really hasn't benefited anybody in the past. So to close this out, I want to ask you a final question. Where do you see this hype either dissipating or shifting to a new area when it comes to artificial intelligence? Because it can't keep this reign up for very long.
AI is here to stay. Right? I think we are entering into this next phase of AI where, as we discussed, a lot of the success is going to come from humans having a very clear understanding of what is the vision in terms of not just the productivity and the economic value, but also the quality of life. Defining that kind of a vision, or at least attempting to understand and invest in sort of the parameters of what that vision could look like, and then having the right kind of governance and support to execute on that vision through using a lot of these technologies. I think the companies that will be successful and also the users that will see significant impact are those that have a clearly defined roadmap and use a varieties of these technologies to actually execute on that roadmap while tracking the metrics in a very clear way. And the metrics are not just linked to productivity or economics; they are also linked to quality of life for the humans, and that includes elements of risk. It includes addressing the right kind of ethical questions as well in terms of what AI can do and what it possibly shouldn't do as well. And then that's where it's very important for the humans to define the right kind of guardrails for how they want to execute on the roadmap while helping them to achieve the objectives and focusing on the areas that they would want humans to actually focus on to improve their productivity and quality of life over a period of time. Autonomous platforms will continue to evolve over a period of time. And by autonomous, we mean platforms that learn and actually are more dynamic, scalable, and personalized in terms of how they execute on the solutions. But the objective of the autonomous platforms needs to be very clear. It is focused on improving the quality of life so that humans can have a better future.
I see that. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And, we could go into a multi-month process of describing what the ethics are, or even trying to figure out if human beings have a value system that they want to define and then guide them appropriately in their life with the direction they want to go. And today I just see many people designing technology for a purpose of pure economic gain, and then it's adopted by the public, and the public really doesn't have any decisioning in what they want for their value or what they want their future to look like. They're only dealing with the guardrails set up by people that are creating technology that says this is all you get to adopt and you have to deal with what you get. So
I was just going to make one key point where we have seen success in terms of the execution and the implementations across some of our customers is that we are actually trying to democratize these autonomous platforms by not only taking the data, but putting the power in the hands of the end users. Essentially, if the end user sees that these autonomous platforms are helping them to be more productive and to have a better quality of life, then that feeds into the employee experience, which in turn feeds into how employees feel about being with their companies, which leads to higher productivity gain and economic value for the companies as well. It's just not the companies actually trying to define certain parameters and technology adoption guidelines for the end users, but actually the end users having the power to experience the impact of these platforms and technologies. And that leads into the productivity, the quality of life, which in turn leads into the companies having the right kind of performance.
Got it. And so if the people listening would like to find out more about your company, Shirish, where would they go to do so?
You can certainly visit our website, EBLISSAI.com. We have a robust presence on social media platforms like LinkedIn as well. So you can visit our site. We have several press articles. We have podcasts, and you can always reach out to us for any additional clarifications that you might need.
Very good. Well, Mr. Nimgaonkar, I really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your insights about what EBLISS AI does, where you see the future headed, and how you see technology helping humanity for humanity's benefit. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks so much, TARTLE, for having me here. It's been a fabulous conversation.
You're most welcome.